nicer if it had been a day I had to wake up early.
Welcome to the Motherfreaking God Theory podcast. This is episode 31. And we got Halloween and hell.
Magic uses, baby!
Magic uses, baby! Oh, wait, you didn't wear any armor? What do you say? I'm an elf, not a nerd. Talking about Community. If you guys haven't seen Community, it's hilarious. You should watch it. Anyway, specifically the one that one we were just talking about, the where they're running for student government. They haven't had student government in because they're a crappy community college. And so they're like, we haven't had student government for 13 years. So we're having Joe Biden come to campus. So we got to have the student government president greet him, but we don't have one. So they have to have hasty elections. And it's just such a great parallel. It's something David pointed out. It's such a great parallel to the Democratic and Republican debates we're watching right now.
I know. It's a perfect critique of our political system. It ends up being an old grumpy white guy making sounds into the microphone while a young hip black guy says "pop pop," shouting nonsense buzzwords to the cheers of the younger crowd.
Yeah. It's hilarious.
And then because everybody is so disconnected from the political system to begin with, doesn't South Park end up winning?
Yeah, South Park. They're like, well, we got 7 votes
for South Park.
Yeah, and he's like, and 4 of these are for South Park. Well, I guess South Park is our new student body president. Oh, that's exactly how it is. That's why they only have two parties. We're only allowed to pretty much vote on 2, because people would show their discontent. I think it's weird where people. So since day one, people have been like, Bernie Sanders can't win. There's no way. He's a nobody. And then he started getting bigger, and they're like, yeah, well, it's just a fad. It'll go away. And then each month it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And now he's breaking records with his rallies, and people are still like, it's just rich white males. And I'm like, it's not though. It's a lot of people. And this is dissemination at work. This is something my lab studies. And I think he's becoming more and more popular because people are sick of that, watching an old guy go into the microphone, and then a young hip dude being like, yeah, I'm hip.
Pop, pop.
Yeah. So I think people are just like, yeah, let's get this to stop. Because every year, there's nobody on both sides. I hear people talk about this. You go to I have a very religious family and very conservative. And when I go over there for holidays and stuff, they're like, oh, I can't trust politicians. And they make politician jokes all the time. And then the same thing, all my Democratic friends or the intellectually reasonable ones, they're all like, oh man, politics is corruption, man, lobbyists, it's horrible. So everybody's sick and tired of, this 2-party freak show that we keep doing.
Yeah.
So Bernie Sanders and even God forbid Donald Trump comes in there, he buys his own way in. That's terrifying. That
I own you. Yeah. Going down the line of the debate.
And then he's like, I'm the only person up here that hasn't taken, or he goes, I paid my way in here. So, and you're just like, whoa, yeah, you did. You're just a billionaire that wants to talk a lot. What the hell? Why are you getting, but oh well, at least he's there saying stuff that other people won't, because he's such an asshole. Because there's nobody he has to please. He doesn't have to be in anyone's pocket. And it's the same thing with Bernie Sanders. He's like, oh, yeah, super PACs? I don't know. No, thank you. And he turns away money from that rich goober that...
the guy who got what was coming to him?
Yeah, pumping up prices on the it was cancer or HIV.
Yeah, HIV.
Oh, that guy. But yeah, so it's good to see people like Sanders step up and, do the right thing. Anyway, so got their podcast. How was your Halloween?
It was uneventful. No trick-or-treaters came by, and I did not dress up. It was just a normal Saturday.
I brought my kids out. One was Star-Lord, and the other one was Green Arrow. We had to go with Green Arrow.
Oh, well, cross universe play, little DC Marvel mashup.
Yeah, it was. There was a lot of contention in the backseat of that. The RAV4, I can tell you that much. They were ready to go at it. Who's better? Marvel, DC. It was horrible.
It's Halloween. It's joining my list of holidays I just no longer give any shits about. It's really? Yeah, Halloween. It's fun if you have kids or if you're in college, because then you can do all the Halloween parties. But once you just become a grown up with no kids, it's like, all right, Halloween, maybe it'll land on a work day and I'll dress up for work. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll be a Saturday, and then fuck that noise.
Man, you need more interesting friends, because there's usually some Halloween parties around that you can, you like cosplay, right?
Yeah, I like it, but I can't afford it.
Oh, right. Yeah, it is expensive. So you like to do it right.
Yeah, I'm not about like picking up a costume from Walmart. Like if I'm gonna get a costume together, it's gonna be I just wandered off the set of a movie kind of quality.
Right. Yeah. There was one of the best ones I saw was somebody went to Halloween to a Halloween party as Netflix and chill, and he's perfectly upright, but he has like a sheet hanging over him, and then there's like a doll head right here facing the other way, and they're clearly supposed to look like they're having sex, and it says Netflix and chill.
Yeah, I don't know. Halloween, Easter, Thanksgiving. There's a lot of holidays where I'm just kind of like, okay, these are days now. Not sure I'm that excited for any of them. Christmas maybe eventually.
You don't do anything for Thanksgiving?
No, I don't have any family nearby. Thanksgiving's all about the family, and it's not really like you have like 3 days off, so getting to Arkansas and back in that time period is just not always very feasible.
Oh man, that sucks. Well, we'll be moving out there soon, so suck it.
That's very comforting.
Yeah, Thanksgiving, suck it. Yeah, so another thing we could talk about besides Halloween, which I found a very weird moderate message. So I have a brother-in-law who's a preacher, and he's one of these like old school like hell and brimstone preachers, right?
Ooh, fun.
And he's actually got this channel called When We Understand the Text. Well, WWUT.
That's when you become an atheist?
yeah. That's what our podcast is called. And it's just a real quick little blurb, and it usually says some ridiculous stuff, right? Like about it's very very conservative Christian type stuff, and it's usually like it'll have a topic, so it'll say like adorning your head in jewelry, like one of these Old Testament type ideas, and he'll talk about it. And,
that's where the word gorgeous comes from.
Really?
Yeah, the French word for throat.
Oh yeah.
Gorge.
Yeah.
And they used to adorn their throats with like jewels and baubles and whatnot, and so it's like, oh, that woman is gorgeous, like she's got some stuff going on around her throat that's very attractive. And so the there's actually two etymologies. One is some people think it might come from a character in a Socratic dialogue, but most people agree it comes from the Old French gorge, which means throat.
Oh, well, that's cool. So it was really it was like a classist remark.
Yeah, it was just there wasn't a lot of skin showing, so you looked at the adornments, and that's a hot looking lady with those sweet necklaces.
Wow. All right. Yeah. So. Oh yeah. But this one was like Halloween. I was like, oh, here we go. But it was just like, hey, make a reasonable decision based on your family. I was like, what?
What?
Where am I? It was the most
very sensible.
Because it was like Halloween, All Hallows Eve. That's how it starts, And it's like kids dressing up as demons, kids dressing up as
witches,
princesses, kids dressing up as Satan. So there was like it was going back and forth, and it was like, well, here are the scriptures that are relevant, and then.
Can we talk about witches or on the subject?
What do you mean?
The Bible has a verse that says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live," which implies that witches are a thing, right? Otherwise, why tell us to kill them if we meet one?
Yeah.
And there's another spot in the Bible where I want to say King Saul meets up with a witch of Dagobah, not Yoda, but like the witch of Dagobah, which is
you can't prove it's not Yoda.
Yeah, that's true, and summons the spirit of a long dead prophet or something. It's been a while since I've read the Old Testament because it's awful. It's just very boring and terrible.
Yeah.
But there's at least two places where witches are involved in the Old Testament as real things. And how is that relevant? Because there's like unicorns and dragons in the Old Testament too. People believe in witches in 2015. That's what's relevant about it. Like, people get upset. They think that there are magic users in the world that can cast spells, real spells. Like, remember the D&D scare of the 90s where it's like, oh, that's witchcraft. You can cast magic if you play a wizard. You can learn real. Remember that chick track Dark Dungeons where Elfstar is like kills herself because her character dies, and then this like youth minister gets them out of D&D and away from the occult.
Yeah. They're like, oh, your character died. That means you die. It was just the weirdest. I was like, that's not how anyone plays D&D. I don't think that's not how I play.
It's the occult, and people are scared of it. They think that there are actually people there. They think people have magical powers that come from Satan. This is what living in a demon-haunted world leads to. Mm-hmm. This is what living in a world where there is magic and there are spirits and there are ghosts and Ouija boards can summon the dead. It sounds like Bronze Age superstition, but it just blows my mind that so many people are scared of it. Even people who are reasonably skeptical about a lot of things, they still are like, well, I don't want that Ouija board in my house. Or I don't want to mess around with witchcraft. It's like, it's not a thing. It's not Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We don't live in that world. This is not that world.
It is the weirdest thing. I've noticed myself, since I ventured away from Supernatural, I've noticed I don't get scared at dumb shit anymore. Like I watched this thing on the video, because all these scary videos are coming out because it's Halloween, right?
Uh-huh.
And this video said the top 15. I think this might have been crack.com. I can't remember. It was one of these top lists, and it said the top 15 scariest GIFs or GIFs if you want to be incorrect. Kidding. I know that's inflammatory. Yeah, which I do. The GIFs is top 15 creepiest ones that prove supernatural things. So of course I click it, right? I'm like, what? And I click it, and it's just dumb shit. Like this guy's door was like and closed behind him. I was like, well, there's some rational explanation for that. And then like the next one was this guy walks forward, and this like black spirit comes up and like pushes him down and drags him by his leg. I was like, that's obviously photoshopped. That's dumb. And then I went through the entire 15. There was nothing. I remember watching that crap, and I get creepy, and I'd be looking around me, and I'm like, I don't want to invite this into my house. And I would close it. It's weird. Or like another one is we were at the house, and one of our windows goes, just collapsed. It just went boom and slapped really hard, and people were like, holy cow, it was a ghost. And I was like, yeah, ghosts aren't real, so that's obviously just wind or something. Like I just don't get creeped out anymore.
Right. It's weird when you leave supernatural thinking behind, just how scared people still are of magic. It's especially around Halloween is where you really see it, because you can see a lot of pushback from the, I live in evangelical Christian USA, where it's like Halloween, that's the devil's time, Satan's night, there are witches and they have powers on Halloween, and all this weird stuff where I'm like, why are you upset about witches? Those are not real. Those are fictional characters. It's like being upset about griffins, like on Halloween, griffins get stronger. You have to stay indoors.
Yeah, keep your inside.
They'll fly off with you. They'll fly off with your livestock. You're like, we don't have livestock anymore. We're not in a pre-industrial society right now.
Have you ever seen a griffin? Well, I don't know. I don't think so. I've seen birds. They might have been griffins.
I've seen lions in the zoo and also eagles. So
no, it's funny because that if I walked in, it just completely fundamentally changes your point of view. Because if I walked in to a room, like a basement somewhere, and someone was down there and they had like candles out, think of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, right? Like the pentagram, the candles and stuff, and and like salt, I'd be like, what in the fuck are you doing? I would laugh, but like back then, like when I believed, I would have been like, oh my god, I would have got out of there. I would have thought that person was for
squeamish just about like role-playing games. You were just like, oh, there's magic involved. Like it changes the way you see the world when you think that there are supernatural powers. It really, like, people always are like, why are you so hard on religion? Religion's harmless now. It does so much good. There's soup kitchens. Most children don't get raped by priests. It's very rare when that happens, like statistically. And I'm like, well, yes, but religion's not harmless. Religion creates a lot of people in this country who are afraid of ghosts and demons and witches. Like that level of fear, thinking hell is a real place. You know how many that's child abuse, like teaching children that if they don't obey, they will be tortured forever by demons. It's a horrifying thing to do. Like, it does cause harm. Like, that level of fear that we lived under, that you and I grew up with, is psychologically damaging, I would assume. I'm not a psychologist, but I can't imagine it's healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, well, that's an empirical question, and nobody's studied it yet. But I can definitely see I don't know, because even if a parent was like, I'm trying to think here, because if you said, I'm going to burn you to death as an adult to your kid, if you didn't do it, I wonder if it would be, if that would be a criminal offense, but
yeah, it would definitely not be a moral thing to do, but would it be illegal?
Or I don't know, because you're really warning that it's out there, not that you would do it. So it'd be like,
it's more like telling your kid, like, if you don't shape up,
there's a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, or if you don't shape up, eventually someone else is going to burn you to death.
Yeah, it's a weird, I don't know, because really it's all about like when you're later in life too, or I guess. I don't know, dude. I know a lot of people who have left religion behind and still have nightmares about hell, and still like have these moments where they're just worried, like, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm going to hell now because I left the church? Like, it seems like it leaves a lot of baggage. Yeah, definitely, especially like sexual puritanism. I mean, we're still, Amy and I still talk about this, like, what's the appropriate, like, I'm of the idea that if like for the Halloween, for example, when they're wearing like skimpy outfits like girls are, I'm like, well, that's fine. If you've got a body that you want to show off and you're only hot for like 10 years, bro, that's fine. Or girl, whatever,
Yeah,
whoever,
girls
guy,
too,
girl.
usually.
Yeah. Whenever you're like 60, you're going to look at those pictures and be like, man, I was so hot. I'm assuming I will too. I'm going to look back and be like, oh man, I looked much better than I do now.
I'm glad I flaunted it while I had it.
Yeah, and here we also have that idea of like thought purity, right? Like, which is
if you
weird.
look upon a woman to commit adultery in your mind, if you look at her with lust, like to Jesus, if you believe Jesus at his word, you might as well have had sex with that woman if you've looked at her and thought she was attractive.
But on the other hand, I kind of get some of that. I don't know, man. I don't know how much this is baggage or how much you got to figure all this out for yourself afterwards. But mine, because one part of it is, I get it. I don't want to be going somewhere and then someone's like, hey, your wife looked pretty hot in that whatever outfit for Halloween. I'd be like, yeah, she did. I know. And then they're like, I totally jerked off like 6 times to it. Then I'd be like, oh, come on, really? I'm not cool with that. I don't know why. But on the other hand, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with someone looking at my wife. I don't get upset about that. If they're like, check her out or something,
right.
like because she's wearing some outfit that,
and even if he jerking off 6 times upsets you, which is an understandable response to that information, I don't think anyone's gonna be thrilled. Like, oh, awesome, good job. How were the orgasms, friend? Like, yeah. But I don't think that even at that point you're going to equivocate the two. You're not gonna say like, oh, well, then you basically slept with my wife, and I'm gonna have to beat you up now.
Yeah. But I did want to put the brakes on some of that when people are like, oh, the way you think isn't necessarily any bad thing, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know, especially if you perseverate over like, for example, sexual violence. I think if I had the propensity, or like children, for example, child molestation, like if I was a pedophile, I would try my best never to think about that and, never indulge that in any way, whether that feeds into behavior, sometimes. But yeah, even just the thought, I feel like would be just criminal. So I don't know if that's spillover or not.
Yeah. Thought crimes are a big part of religion, so it's hard to know like how much of that is just good common sense and how much of it is just control mechanisms.
Like the Puritanism thing, like until so we have this cool thing with the internet where we're exposed to an international audience, and so on this thing called Reddit, this site, there's a lot of people from all over the place, and I often hear people from other countries give they'll ask questions about America. They're like, what is that like there? Or why are you guys so big on like, how come you guys show like this show called Game of Thrones where people just tear people's heads off? How is that okay? And then if it is, how come you're better okay with that than like the part where there's boobs? Someone's like, cover your eyes when the boobs come, but when the violence comes, they're like, ooh, those are the bad guys. Like, what the hell? And I'm like, I don't know. To me, that seems normal. I guess, I don't know. And like, there's nothing bad about a woman's body or a man's body. It's nice to look at, depending on your sexual orientation. But violence is like, there's people that are hurt there. I mean, like, you're like, oh, you're disturbed.
Yeah, well, if I can refer you back to our episode about fuck the Puritans. Fuck the Puritans. Like, they left us this legacy of cultural heritage. Like, you cannot, it's really hard to escape an entire childhood and young adulthood of programming by your culture, right? This is why it's so hard to stamp out racism or sexism or, misogyny or whatever. If you're steeped in it, it's hard to even understand that you're thinking that way. It's like a goldfish trying to comprehend the concept of water. Like, if you're just surrounded by it, you're not really thinking about it anymore. So even when you leave religion, it's really hard to leave American culture entirely. You're still going to be more squicked by some guy getting his rocks off than getting his head chopped off.
Yeah. It's weird, the complete lack of regard for people's lives. Like when people say things like, I was looking at some police brutality things, and, I was looking at the police point of view, the officers, and they were talking about why they, do lethal force. And the guy was just saying things like, engage the target and engage in lethal force. And I was like, yeah, I get it. That distances you from the act. But, what if you use the words? How does that make you feel? To say like to murder someone. When is it okay to murder a human being? Like, they're not using that language. And, I was in the military. I remember using those sorts of language, but I would also cognitively bring it up, the fact that, I took someone's life. Maybe that's why it's so disturbing to me. But that and the work fetishism, like, it's just, it's too much here. I heard someone say this happened. I heard someone say just probably less than a week ago, they said, I had a day off and I didn't even know what to do with myself. And people talked about that as a positive thing. They're like, oh, well, that just means you're going to be successful. I was like, in what? money making? Yeah, and money making. I mean, money making just trading dollars for hours and then eventually making that ratio better and better. So of course you will. Yeah, but you might have a heart attack by the time you're 40 if you can't relax on a Saturday. I don't know. That whole idea and the celebration of just hordes of money, just outright greed, saying like, oh, he's successful because he's rich. I'm like, successful in what? And they're like, he's successful. Yeah, and I'm like, he's successful at what though? How is his relationship with his kids? When he dies, are there going to be hordes of people saying, oh, what a tragedy? Or are they going to be like, he was a fucking dick, but he was rich. He left me a lot of money. Like I don't want to be in column B. I don't think that's successful. It's just weird that we equivocate the word successful with rich. It's strange to me.
Right. No, I agree. It's just the weird heritage we've gotten, and that's why people in Europe and Australia and everywhere else, they have a hard time understanding some of the American culture because they didn't grow up with that same heritage. Like Europe certainly had a very long history of religious dominance, but it wasn't by Puritans. Like the Catholics, for all their vices, they were never like, ban Christmas, no dancing, no face cards. Like it's a very specific sort of religious heritages that we came out of as a country. And yes, it was more than just Puritans. There were Quakers and everything else, but they did leave a sort of an indelible mark on the way our culture, kind of what we value.
Yeah, which sucks.
Let's
you and I cut that out. Let's do something about it.
Seriously, if I had a time machine, going back in time, I was
assassinate all the Puritans. Oh, did you? Okay,
good. I was just gonna say. I was gonna say. Last night I was talking about if I had a time machine. I was talking about Pastor Graham. You know who that guy is? He's the guy who was like the graham cracker and Kellogg's cornflakes as a way to stop like masturbation in young boys.
Yeah.
It's like the inventor of the graham cracker. But one of the things too that he brought in was male circumcision. Like it used to be before him. It was pretty rare to be circumcised if you weren't Jewish, right? That's like in the locker room, you could spot the Jewish kid by his circumcised dick, because for some reason we make adolescents be naked together in locker rooms. It's a weird thing, but anyway, because of Pastor Graham, one of his tricks to get kids to stop masturbating was to make circumcision like a thing for everybody, and because that cuts off a lot of the pleasure centers and the nerves. And I was like, man, there's no telling how great sex could be for guys if we had all of our penises. Like they cut off like the best part of it, you know, the tip, and they're like, well, enjoy having sex now, assholes. I mean, it's the same concept behind female circumcision, right? You're trying to make it so they don't enjoy sex, so they won't do it.
Yeah,
it's trying to control the sexuality of your children. And so that's where our, you know, we have all these medical like back explanations now, like, oh, it's cleaner, it's less infections, which is just kind of dubious. But the real reason it got big was because this guy was trying to stop kids from whacking off. And I was thinking, if it wasn't for him, everybody's sex would be so much better. We could all be having way better sex, just way more enjoyable orgasms. And then I was like, man, if I could go back in time and kill one person, that might be him. And then I was like, or maybe Hitler. And Michelle, I was talking to Michelle, and she's like, what? Are you serious? Over Hitler? And I'm like, no, hear me out.
Hold on.
Whenever someone says, hold on, hear me out, you know it's going to be horrible. But I was like, listen, 6 million Jews is a terrifying thing. That's terrible. It's one of the worst things that ever happened. But it was finite. It ended. There were 6 million Jews. They died. That was a terrible thing. How many billion people get to have worse sex before that equivocates? Like, it's an infinite number of people having bad sex. At some point, does it eventually become a worse atrocity if the body count gets higher? It's like a weird moral dilemma.
It's like strictly, it's like utilitarian. If you take a utilitarian approach and like
exactly.
add up
if you add the amount of like happiness lost, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take billions of people to equal a Holocaust. It's going to take billions upon billions. But eventually, if we let it run its course, won't it eventually happen?
Yeah. There's a branch of philosophy called hedonic calculus, and it has to do with utilitarianism. And it takes utilitarianism to the nth degree and says, well, what if there are these things called utiles, and that would be a small measurement of good. And so they started like quantifying these, or attempting to. And so over time, there's this there's this whole branch that starts adding that up and saying like what's better than that, and how many, for example, orgasms would it take to equal a human life? And it would take thousands, millions, but it's saying like what it does is it asks questions, like it takes thought experiments and says like, okay, so if I had a gun to your throat and I said to you, you can't ever have, for the next billion times you try to orgasm, you won't be able to, so in other words, probably the rest of your life, I assume, unless you're very sexually active, then some people might for those people, they might be like, oh man, that's not worth it. But for someone like me, I might be like, I could probably live without an orgasm. That's fine. So like there is a point though where it does tip for some people. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's like a horrifying thought experiment, but it's just like seeing her face being like, wait, over Hitler? And I'm like, no, hear me out. Also, in 2015, all those people would still be dead at this point, and we still have people having bad sex.
It's also how our brains work. Like we have anchor points. Like when in psychology we use something called a Likert type scale, which is like 1 to 7, and then it's I completely disagree to mostly or to completely agree, and then you get in betweens. Well, those anchors we often try to think of things like that too. What's the worst? Like when you say pain, 1 to 10, and people almost always say what's a 10, or what's a 1, and you're like, well, a 1 would be just walking on the street on a beautiful day, no pain whatsoever, or 0. And the 10, what would 10 be? And then people are like, oh well, either getting your testicles operated on while you're awake, or having a baby with tons of complications and no drugs or whatever. But we want these anchors, and the thing is those start taking on a sacredness to us, because that's how we frame our world. We don't want someone jacking around with that. And whenever
when it comes to like evil people that have existed, Hitler is our anchor. He's the go-to most evil person ever to walk the earth. Even though, if we're just looking at a larger lens, one could argue Genghis Khan caused the deaths of way more people.
Or Attila the Hun.
Right. But it ends up being Hitler because he's our most recent memory. It's still pretty fresh in our collective consciousness.
Yeah. Whenever, maybe that guy was like mentally ill. I don't know. Yeah, that would have been an interesting conversation to have with that guy in a assessment standpoint. Figure out how he thought the way he thought, but I don't know. Maybe it's just a lot of cocaine. Who knows? And just awful ideas.
I don't know. I think it was showing up on his mustache.
That's a good point. Yeah, maybe that's why he trimmed it so tight, though. You don't know. And he used Hawthorne wipes to keep it clean. But anyway,
got a pocket full of Hawthorne.
he totally sells out too. He's like this homophobic old man, and he totally sells out because it's like, oh wait, they're worth billions of dollars. Oh, okay. Which shows that behavioral tendencies trump ideals in many situations, which is another point in the episode, which is about hell, right? Like,
well, we're talking about using fear as the carrot and the stick method of controlling human behavior. If heaven's the carrot, then hell's the stick.
Yeah, and there's so much to say about it. Like, if you could approach this from a social psychology point of view and talk about the experiments that were done about smoking. They had fear tactics for smoking. They had fear tactics for vaccines. Use it for autism. We've looked at that. We've looked at attitude change for getting a vaccine. I think it was the flu shot that we looked for. And they like just all these different ways to approach this. But really, I think the most salient one is this: does it actually? What is it? So a lot of times I ask myself, I think I said in the last one, what would it look like if I was wrong, right? And one of the questions you can ask yourself if you're a believer is, what would it look like if I was wrong? This hell thing, right? Really, this looks like to me, whatever, because I deal with kids, like parents disciplining their children and helping them do it more effectively, right? And more humanely. And many times people will come in and they're like, oh man, and they'll admit that they spanked their child, even to the point where they've beaten them, right? They've just been like, I spanked them. I did this thing where I spanked them over and over and over and over and over again. And then he still did it a week later. And I was like, yeah, how did you get there? I always ask him that. How did you get to where you're at right now, where you're coming in and you can't figure out how to control this human's behavior? And they're like, well, it started by warning and then counting to 3 and that didn't work. And then spanking, that stopped working. And then spanking even more and that stopped working. And then this. And I'm like, yeah, that's you turning up that dial on something that works okay in the short run, but in the long run doesn't. And you kept turning it up. And now you're at max and you can't figure out how to affect it anymore. They're like, yeah. And I'm like, how about this? That sounds like a dial that you shouldn't be using. That's punishment, right?
You're bad at that dial.
Yeah. That you can't use just punishment, and more importantly, punishment is the least desirable and most effective in the short run, least effective in the long run for controlling behavior. So you see these parents or these people who are trying to push something that's counterintuitive to human nature, and what you see when they come in and go, this is broken, is that it's just all the way max. You're just like, what the fuck? And that's what hell is. It's like, hey, if you don't, like, if I said to you, David, I don't want you to eat fatty foods because I want you to be around later. And you're like, okay. And later you do it anyway. And I'm like, hey, fatty, or something, I call you a bad word. And then over time, because I'm away from you, right, I have no effect on your behavior and at the day-to-day basis. And then I'm like, oh yeah, well someone's gonna hurt you if you do it. And you're like, my God. And I'm like, yeah, someone's gonna hurt you for a long time, forever. Someone's gonna hurt you forever, for always.
Holy shit.
For all time after you die, and it will never stop, and it'll be the worst pain ever. It's just this complete max
all the way. Yeah, it can't get higher. There's nowhere to go from there.
That's to me, that's what that shows, and that just shows that that's a broken knob. You don't understand human behavior, and you've just used whatever you could because you were like heaven, and they're like, yeah, but really, and you're like, yeah,
or
but
hell.
if not hell, yeah.
They're like, what's hell? And you're like, it's pretty uncomfortable there, mildly warm. And like, oh, I think I'll go with that. Just kidding, it's on fire. Oh, that's worse, and you get tortured.
The whole afterlife to me reeks of what happens whenever. So I had the opportunity to go into an inpatient facility for 2 years, not to be a patient, but to be a behavioral control. So we go in, and a lot of times, these people who watch these people every day, they're called direct support professionals, and try to get them to do what they're supposed to do. They're like, they just won't do it. And they got to the point where, they were promising, like, the things they were doing to try to control behavior is they were like, we'll take you to, it's like about an hour drive, an hour away, pay for you to go to these movies, go out to eat, do all these things, if just by the end of the weekend you'll just do your chores. And I was like, my God, how much money have you guys spent doing that reinforcer? Wow. And to me, that's like heaven, right? You've gotten so crazy where you're just like, you keep cranking it up, because like, well, we used to use candy, but it doesn't work anymore. And I'm like, the fuck, that's because you don't know what you're doing. And then
it's just like the result of thousands of years of bad behaviorism. That's what heaven and hell is.
And the negative was this: they said, we're going to kick you out, and I'm like, you're going to get they're native services. What the fuck? Like, it just shows to me that every time I walk into a system like that, it's a testament that they have no idea what they're doing with human behavior. And so the same thing happens whenever I look at the Bible's supernatural. I'm like, this just shows me that you guys have no clue what you're doing. This is the antithesis to a divinely inspired document.
That's an interesting way of looking at it, because if you actually look at the Bible, you see the concept of hell like evolved a lot to our present day. It wasn't, our present day idea of hell is more of influenced by Dante than by anything in the Bible. Like, it's very, the Bible just talks about, almost a Greek classical view of hell with shades wandering around. You can conjure them up and ask them questions, sort of thing. Jesus mentioned a lake of fire where the worm never rots in one of his parables, but that's like the first, it's relatively modern in the scope of the Bible, when the idea of a burning coming from like the pits of Sheol or whatever, like it's a slow kind of ramping up from like the old Hebrew idea of you just stop existing, to you exist but you're just a shade, to Abraham's bosom versus the pit of fire, to today's modern Dante's Inferno idea of hell. So you can see, like, over the course of religious development, this cranking up of those two dials to where they just become ridiculous, right? Like, even our heaven concept has gotten way out of hand. Like, it used to be just like, you sing praises to God forever. And now it's like, and you're with your family, and your dog is there, and everything's happy, and the streets are paved with gold. Like, it's all this kind of fan fiction that's erupted outside extra biblical extrapolation, and you can see that as the result of like people just twisting these dials. It's like, well, no, you don't just sing praises. There's also your dog is there, and you don't just stop existing. There's also fire now, and demons, and they rape you. There's rape demons.
It's fire. It's burning you, and you're like, well, eventually it ends. Like, no, you become new in flesh again. That's like one of the newer ideas. And then I was like, well, at least you can see what it is. And they're like, no, and it's dark. It's dark too. I'm like,
super dark.
Dark with fire? They're like, yeah, because the smoke, it's choking. And I'm like, well, then what? So you have to breathe air, but it's magically doesn't, you can't get it because of the smoke, but it magically doesn't kill you. And they're like, yeah, your whole body's run on magic, dark magic. It's just
shit, dark magic.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't want to be there. And then, like, or the eating, they're like, you eat at banquets. I'm like, I eat at banquets right now. I literally just went to the Golden Corral and ate at a banquet. And they're like, well, with your family and friends. I was like, yeah, the Golden Corral, I did that. And they're like, in space. And I'm like, what? That sounds cool. Yeah, with your dog, the one that died when you were 6. I'm like, oh, I hated that. That was super sad. They're like, you'll be there.
He'll remember you. He's still a puppy.
There's no, that it's the anchor on one of these 1 to 10s, right? Or 1 to 7s, depending on which type of scale, because of the fact that if you ask this, anything that can make hell worse, they'll be like, yeah, probably. And anything that can make heaven better, they'll be like, yeah, probably. Like, it's just.
And there's a tension too about those two existing at once, because normally it's impossible to have perfect bliss because we have empathy if we know other people are being tortured next door. right?
Yeah.
Like if my whole family's in heaven and I'm in hell because I'm the one atheist, or two, one of the atheists. But let's say they're there. Are they going to be perfectly happy with me burning in hell? No. So they add new nuances. They're like, oh well, yeah, but you don't remember the people who are in hell. Like you just forget all about them. Like that sounds kind of horrifying. That's like Clockwork Orange. Like that's some some fucking Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind kind of shit. Now you're taking people's memories. Well, yeah, because if you remembered them, you'd be sad, and you can't be sad in heaven. Wait, there's no baseline. It's always happy. Like, yeah, how's that even work psychologically? Wouldn't we just become numb to it after a while? No, you're so happy. You're just every day you get happier forever.
yeah. And the funny thing is there's a philosophical. So you took intro to philosophy, right, in college, and they probably did this. They talked about this, and they did in mine. I had to take it twice because it didn't transfer over from fucking our first joke at college SMS. But and they asked the question both times, which is, it's about utopias, and it was this idea that, what would happen if you live in this society and everything's perfect and everything's great, but you find out one day that to maintain that, there's one guy that has to torture a baby that lives in filth and darkness and poop and urine. Right. And it's never seen the outside, so it's completely ignorant. But could you be okay with that?
Yeah, it's kind of like the Lottery or The Giver. There's a lot of dystopian short stories or novels that explore this idea of like, at what price would you be willing to pay for paradise, and would that lose some of its savor if you found out what the price was?
Yeah, and there's always a point where, the interesting point about the philosophical question is like, where do you draw the line? Where do individuals draw the line? There's no wrong or right answer. It's just how uncomfortable are you as a person? And I noticed that people's hands went up at different times, because first he said, what was a full-grown adult who chose to be there? And he's about 75 and he chose to be there, and it's not, he's like, I'll do it. I only have about a year life left in those conditions anyway, and I want to do this for you. And then people are like, oh, like Jesus. And it's like, yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, torture just, to save everyone. And they're like, well, yeah, sure, I'm okay with that if he volunteered. We try to talk him out first. But then eventually, it moved further and further to the grotesque, to the point where, no, you don't have a choice of this. In fact, you were told that it wasn't going to happen, but the wrong person told you, and it was more akin to religion, So, no, you were Buddhist, wrong answer, buddy. You're going to hell. And then people, hands kept going up as it got worse and worse, to the point where it's like, what if you're a baby? We're born in sin. So, you baby, your mom looks at you and goes, hey, little guy. And you think in your head, fuck you, in baby language, bam, straight to hell. Like, it was this. People weren't comfortable with it, was the point. So it's just impossible to get around that idea that it makes you a monster to be okay, till the last point of class, where it was like a baby is being cut and murdered and burned and resurrected through unnatural means, and kept doing, until finally the last person put their hands up, because even that guy was like, all right, that's just too much. Right?
Okay, you need to read The Rebellion in Brothers Karamazov. It's a chapter that deals exactly with this problem, where the premise is, if I have to live in a world where you can shoot babies in the face in order for free will to exist and this whole heaven and hell system to work, that's too much. That price is too high for salvation. I return my ticket. I don't want any part of that system. It's one of the best defenses of moral atheism that I've ever seen, and it's written by a guy who was actually quite a believer. Well, he wrestled with doubt most of his life, but he kind of landed on the believer side of the fence, Dostoevsky. But it's a very well written defense of atheism.
I love how they say wrestles with doubt. You never hear a skeptic say that. No, fuck, I wrestle down all the time. No, it's like, oh, by default, I doubt.
Yeah, I doubt is a very natural, because we don't believe credulity is a virtue, right? Like we don't fetishize faith,
right? Nor should we. Like, all that does is cement you into it, to give you first preference to what was the first idea you ever had. Now, don't doubt it.
Hopefully, it was the right one.
Yeah, good luck. Oh man. Literally, you'll be tortured to death forever if you got it wrong.
And there's no self-correcting mechanism, so you just gotta hope you got it right.
I know, man, that did not sit well with me. But that's why I'm here, I guess. And not over there.
Good. Hell, spooky, scary behavior.
Halloween. Yeah, if I found, like, whenever people make, I just heard one of these too, because we did a scary story thing with the kids, and it's just funny, the things they say. But I was looking at one online where someone was talking about a Ouija board, which you mentioned before, and they were like, and I remember hearing these from when I was a young Christian too, in youth group. And
you don't mess with those, man. Parker Brothers creates them in factories and puts demons in them.
Yeah, this is somehow the veil is broken now. But
from the makers of Monopoly, we have broken the veil to the afterlife.
Yeah, and made it affordable by sending it to China to be made. But they, the idea is one of these stories that you've heard, of this guy was playing Ouija board, and then he got creeped out about it, him and his college friends, and he throws it away and he burns it, and then he takes those ashes and throws them in water. It's more of this turning up of the dial, you're like, okay. And then so I was like, and then he gets home and then he hears his dryer on. He's like, my dryer's on. And he goes in, this is a real story I heard, and it goes in, he opens the dryer to get his clothes out, and the Ouija board's in there on top. It's wet, just like it's been in the seawater. And I was like, yeah, at the time I was like, oh, see, that's why you don't mess with those things. And now I'm just keep thinking to myself, if someone said that to me, I'd be like, lame. It's obviously a lie.
I know.
Like, who told you that?
No, it wasn't.
I know if they were like my friend, I'd be like, okay, then he's pulling your leg.
Why atheists aren't fun at Halloween parties, because we're just like at every go, we're like, nope, that didn't happen.
Yeah,
nope.
Unless it's very real thing.
Evidence.
Well, some people
like a scary story.
There's a level of protection too, though, because like if I'm somewhere and they're like, there's a murderer on the loose, right? Mm-hmm. And I just read this article about what was it called? Serial killers that are alive and out of jail today. It was on crack.com. You can find it. And I was like, oh God, that's creepy, man. The ability of humans to take other humans' lives so, joyfully, even like that, is terrifying. And religious people, I remember when I was religious, I'd just be like, oh, I'll just pray over the house. If I sanctify the house, no evil can enter here. What the fuck? The guy's going to come and straight murder you. He doesn't care about your whisperings at night on your knees. He's going to murder you. So it does give you a little protection, right?
Yes.
But anyway.
Okay, so as we're wrapping up, we did get one of the listeners, Darby, on the Facebook group just linked a meta study. Did you know they've actually studied whether or not circumcision affects sexual satisfaction?
Oh, no.
Apparently, they compiled over 2,500 different studies about male circumcision, and they have decided that, according to this meta-study, that it does not have any adverse effect on sexual function, sensitivity, sexual sensation, or satisfaction. So, fuck you, Pastor Graham. Your plan didn't work. Those kids are still masturbating and enjoying it, even though you circumcised them. So I might have to change my answer back to Hitler now. This is new data has come in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I sometimes think that because, like the inner skeptic in myself, and I know I always kind of accepted that as a default position, but I always wondered to myself, I was like, I don't think I want it to be any better. It's pretty awesome right now. It feels better. It just blow my mind. I would just
my
be like,
freaking mind.
Like, I don't want to do that anymore. It'd be like a roller coaster the first time you do it, and you get that sensation in your stomach, and you're like, I just am afraid that's what it would be like. So I'm like, you can have that skin. That's fine with me.
It's too much power for one man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, apparently, Mr. Graham was mistaken, and it actually did not make kids less likely to rub one out, which explains all of teenagers since that day.
Amazing. Okay. Well, good. I hope everyone had a good Halloween. Thanks for watching and listening, and I guess we'll see you guys again next week.
Oh, before we go, one quick plug. If we're still on the air, I just recently heard an album by a rap artist named Baba Brinkman, and definitely check him out on YouTube. He raps about religion and sociology, which sounds like the weirdest three things to rap about, like rap, religion, and sociology all in one thing, but it's super fun.
No, dude, ever since you turned me on to that, who's that French rapper? Remember, he's a black guy.
Oh, MC Solar?
That's him, yeah. He is like... He raps about some real shit. Like it's more, I often call it hip hop because it doesn't sound like American rap. Although there are American hip hop artists that do this, but it was intense. Oh, yeah, one more plug. I was just on the Cellar Door podcast. It's run by a guy named Christopher Tanner, and I talked on there about hell as well, but to a somewhat of a different degree. So if you want to go listen to that, you definitely can. He'll be putting it out, I believe, today.
Cellar Door Skeptics, right?
Yeah, Cellar Door Skeptics.
Cool.
So, all right. And everyone else, we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.